and we're here. Yeah. Obviously, I haven't done my hair. Ashley has. Yeah, I've seen the pictures. How are you?
Good.
Just a nod. Yeah.
Good.
Just a nod. Yes. I'm good. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah. I think what we should put out there, because obviously we are going to be talking about all aspects of trauma, is a trigger warning for anyone that does become triggered. That it's not intentions to trigger, unless Ashley starts killing her hair. I don't know. But I don't know. I'm on one today. But yeah, I think we should kickstart. Obviously, I know Nance. Welcome back, by the way.
Thank
It's
you.
been what, about a month?
It's been a while. I've been a busy lady.
Absolutely, with your conventions and your gigs and your speeches.
Oh heck, I in 1 week I put on 44 driving hours. So
Wow.
yeah.
A few. That's
Yeah. So why don't you kickstart? Because obviously off camera you was mentioning something really interesting about trauma.
Well, I was just on a beautiful summit, and I was talking about resolving regret, and the after the colon, resolving regret, colon, are you living to die or dying to live? And it is that understanding that we have all lived trauma. We have all struggled with the dramatization of life, where we often look at the things in our lives and go into a state of, oh, resolve. It's just always going to be like this. There's no way I can change anything. And it's when you move toward the champion set of standards that your life changes. But it is a set of it really is a set of standards. It's a choice, and who you surround yourself with is exponentially important.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, because we've all experienced some sort of trauma, whether it's falling off a bike when we was about 3 years old, to I don't know, getting in a relationship that can be traumatic. Because obviously, and why I say that, because I thought, you know what, I have to say this, because getting into a relationship when we've been through all that trauma, all that shit, it triggers our anxiety. Thinking, is this person going to be all right for me? Because we always think about living up to our parents' expectations or our in-laws' expectations, but we never think about living up to our partners or ourselves. So we always think, am I good for that person, or is that person good for me? After going through that shit, or are they going to treat me like shit? I don't know. Have any of you experienced that?
Well, like I tell my students, we've been gifted with something in our brains called the RAS, the reticular activating system. And whatever you look for, you're going to find. So if you're saying, well, I'm looking for to have a bad relationship, or if I look to be treated this way, guess what? It's going to happen. So, and even back in the early 1900s, the gentleman that taught Napoleon Hill even said that your obsessions become your possessions. So whatever you constantly think about, you become. So if you're thinking, I'm not going to be a great husband, or I'm not going to be a great father, you're probably not going to be a great father. So I always talk about, look for the things that you are going to be and aspire to be. Like when I married my wife, I didn't ask myself, is she the woman for me? I asked myself, am I the man that she deserves?
Yeah.
And that made me try to be a better husband every single day. So I think it's the quality of the questions that you ask is how your life will turn out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Christine? Because I know you've gone through, I'm going to say, hell and back. You're muted.
Several times. Several times. Yes. Um, I would. I'd like to comment on Nancy's regret. I got asked that question a lot when I first started going on podcasts and telling my story. If I had any regret, what I know today and where I'm at today in my life, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Did I live it when I was going through the abuse from my former husband? Probably. Didn't realize it. But as I healed and grew and became the woman I am today, there is no regret. I'm on a mission to help every single woman and man out there in an abusive relationship to get out, to get healed. I wouldn't be that woman if I had regrets and didn't go through what I went through. Was it traumatic? Absolutely. I just commented that, yes. Did it put me through hell? Absolutely. But would I change anything? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I love the woman that I am today. I love the mission that I'm on, my purpose in life. That is what keeps me going. That is what keeps me moving forward. To know that I can help, if I can help one woman through my talks, my speeches, my posts, my writings, conversations just with other people, if I can help one person not experience what I experienced, or to help them heal quicker than what I healed, then I've accomplished. And I have no regrets.
Yeah. Nick, what about you?
Yeah, and I think we wear a lot of like hats in life. We have a roles and family roles, father, son, brother. We have obviously our partner or husband, wife, and work and or business. And I think with all these different roles, we have different pressures and us different expectations of how we'll behave and all those different things. But I think I like what Christine said. I think it's I think it's important for anyone, but I think particularly to keep us going through challenging times, it's having that purpose. What it's not just what are we doing, what do we do, what do we want to do, but actually what difference do we might want to make? Us, do we have a sort of mission, something we want to achieve and help others? Or what's our passion? What's our, is that why? Why do we do what we do? What motivates us? And I think at times I talk trauma or get over trauma. That's more important than ever. But I think that's something that's sort of when you talk about Christine resonating me. I think it's.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, my daughter's just I don't know, she's doing something with the cats.
You can't put the cat in the kitchen.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna mute. You just carry on while she's having a bitch fit.
Well, and I think it's really important for us to understand that when we're in the trauma, like Christine was talking about abuse, when we're in the abuse, we don't know that we're in the abuse. When you're in the ocean, do you know what water feels like, or are you simply there? Right? When you got your head above the water and the water is splashing on you, you realize the water is splashing on you. But when you are in the ocean, you don't even know that you're in the water, and all you're trying to do is make it through the next day. And then you get sucked into the patterns of it. Maybe next time it'll be better. It's not that bad. And the big one, worrying too much about what others think. What other people think is none of our business. None of our business. Let them think what they think. Rise above it all and just start showing the world how amazing you are.
Amen. Preach, sister. Preach.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems Ashley's been quiet. How are you?
I'm fine. I said that before. It's fine. Everything's fine. No, I think when I look at There's a fly buzzing around me. When I look at the traumas that I've experienced over my life and the expectations that I end up setting after that said trauma, and when they go unmet, I think it's recognizing that the change has to start with me sometimes, that I can't control the outside circumstance or the other person that may be involved in those expectations. And I have to dig within to then see the changes happen. But then also, I think it is one of those scenarios where when you first get into that relationship and you have this expectation of, oh, everything is going to be grand and it's going to be great. And then realizing that, yes, it isn't that. But then how can you evolve the relationship? How can you make it better? Again, starting with the changes within you. And how can you make it a relationship that you both end up working for and wanting to be better? But if the other party isn't a willing participant in that and doesn't have a desire for change, well, then, yeah, evaluation has to happen. But at the end of the day, you have to be the catalyst to the change.
Is that after you get harassed and traumatized by a fly?
Well, you know, if I had a fly swatter handy, I'd kill it. But yeah, I don't. So.
Is your husband not a fly swatter?
No, he's not even home, so I can't use him as a fly swatter anyway.
Use one of your kids.
Yeah, no, they're putting stuff away. And probably fighting with each other. That's just my day-to-day chaos, you know.
So
chances are likely that they are fighting, right? And doesn't it build resiliency when we have families that have a lot of children? Yeah, right. Like you're creating your own WWF situation, right? Like I know my sons, they used to go, oh my God, fisticuff, rod, the things that they would do. I remember when I was at my brother's wedding, and it was the day after, like the day of the gift opening, and my brother wasn't paying much attention. He kept on looking out the window, and I'm like, you got to pay attention to this stuff. He's like, nah, I'm going to watch what's going on outside, right? And I'm like, what's going on outside, right? So I look, and there's my two sons on the front yard rolling around like they are trying to choke each other because one of them rolled the other one in dog poop. So now the mission was to roll the other one in dog poop. And my brother, being the brilliant soul that he is, I went outside, broke it up. I'm like, oh my God, right? And he grabbed two of his skateboarding shirts, gave one to each of the boys, and that was that. There's a way to solve the problems that are kind and considerate, because the words that we say, the actions that we take, they impact people in the biggest ways. As parents, we have a huge responsibility. As husbands, wives, there's a big responsibility on us. Always.
Yeah, I feel like I fail that department very regularly. I'm just being honest, because there are 5 boys and 1 girl. It is massive, just chaos most days of fist biting, slapping, scratching, biting, hitting. It doesn't matter. And I'm just like, peace out. Figure it out. Be your own referee. I'm done. Like, I'm so outnumbered. Nope, I'm not getting in the middle of that. You problem solve it. You figure it out all on your own. Like,
Yeah. Anyway, I think we should talk about trauma within the families when living with an addiction. I think that would be brilliant. Richard's not keen.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously I know most of us have had problems with drink, drugs maybe, just anything. So what impact does that have on? Obviously, I know it beats us up, but in the heat of the moment, we're fine and we're going all defensive and probably toxic towards the people we love, which isn't our intentions. But what impact does that have on families when we're basically high or intoxicated with alcohol?
Can I take this one?
You can.
So when I was little, and I did not know this until I was well into my adulthood, but it turns out that my grandmother from my father's side was an alcoholic. And I didn't hear the stories that how bad she was till I had adult conversations with my father. And I mean like in my 30s and 40s. But we didn't know this growing up with Nanny. That's what we called her. She was my grandmother, but we called her Nanny. As it turns out, my brother, who was 11 months younger than me, was an alcoholic as well. And I'm talking probably 11, 12 years old. Okay. So we were young, but he would take a large glass about this, go into Dad's liquor cabinet and fill it 3/4 of the way of vodka, and the rest was orange juice, and take that to school. Now, his body knew, I know this stuff now, his body just knew that he needed that alcohol to survive, to live, to get by. We didn't know this growing up. This was just life. We were young. Nanny was always drunk. If we had family affairs, she would drink. She'd come to the parties drunk, whether it was Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays. That was just Nanny. Okay. And we accepted it because as kids, we didn't know any better. But seeing my brother then go through his alcoholism and his stages, and of course, progress from alcohol till he was about 14, 15, and started with other drugs that, because Adam, we know how this works, that you try and recreate that same high. You can't do it with the same drug or more drug, whatever that drug is. So you switch your drug. And he did. And I did lose my brother when he was 15. I was 16. Again, not knowing this when you're a 16-year-old kid, not knowing life, because back then, all that shit got swept under the carpet, okay? Yeah. Nobody talked about it. Nobody had conversations that Nanny was a drunk. Nobody had conversations that my brother was, that we didn't talk about that. After his funeral and after he had passed and all the wake was done and everything, we never talked about it ever again. My parents never brought it up again. When I would try to have conversations with my parents, no, we switched the subject. We walked away. We did not talk about the fact that I lost a brother due to alcoholism, okay? So I didn't know any better. I don't know any of this. When I'm 16, 17, 18 years old, I don't know any better. That was my life. I was brought up in an alcoholic family. I was also, because of the trauma that I endured, I was also brought up in a very abusive family. Okay. From the day I was born, I've endured abuse. I found out in my 30s that I was molested by my grandfather on my mother's side till I was about 4 or 5. I had an uncle from my mother's side that raped me when I was about 12 or 13. I learned sex equals love, not knowing any better. And now bring alcohol and drugs into the mix. I was one hell of a fucked up girl for a very long time. But you don't know that you're living in that situation because that is all I knew. I knew sex in a whatever way it was. I knew alcohol. I knew drugs. I knew dysfunctional family like you wouldn't believe. But that's all I knew. It wasn't until I finally, after the last husband, realized that, okay, something's wrong here. Nothing's working in my life. I've had 2 failed marriages. I've been, not only all that abuse that I went through in my young years, but I've been abducted 3 times. I've been date raped, I can't tell you how many times, gang raped so many times because of the sex that I learned very early on. And it was not a healthy sex, without a doubt. It was not healthy. So it wasn't until later in life that I realized this isn't life. This isn't the way things are supposed to go. That was how, when you finally acknowledge all that and can begin to heal from that, then you can say, okay, now I can tell my story all day long and say, hey, these are the things that happened to me. They're just facts. They're no longer issues. They're no longer triggers. They're no longer defining who I am. They're just facts. But it wasn't until I recognized all that and went through my healing journey that I could say, today, that's just all shit that happened to me. It does not define who I am today. That's childhood trauma. That's dealing with family. I mean, you want to talk generational curses, right, Miss Nancy? I see you not. I mean, yeah.
I mean, just absolutely nailing it, because it's those things that we don't talk about. My mom's side of the family, beautiful Christian family with its fair share of, I mean, there was always drinking at the family events to a small degree, but it was just normal. Drinking was normal. On my dad's side of the family, drinking was a sport. I mean, we're talking, they came from Newfoundland. My dad was a full drinker, 14, if not 13 or 12. Left the home to get away from his father. And then the discussion, oh, dad wasn't that bad, you're overreacting. And my uncle, the layers and levels of my uncle's addiction, his brother, it's mind-boggling. And that's generational trauma, where all of a sudden you start watching shows like The Sopranos or Sons of Anarchy, and you're like, amateurs, right? And it becomes like, isn't everybody else like this? And then you realize no, and then you're in the shadows of shame, because now all you want to do is be normal like everybody else. So you start baking cookies and wearing long sleeve shirts to cover the bruises. It becomes normal. And until that one person in the family stands up and says, well, no, it continues.
Yeah.
So it's about being that champion, or if you can't be that champion, cheer the champion on. That's how we break the trauma pattern. It's a pattern. It truly, truly is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I see it, as much as, because I discovered this so late in life, my children are still, they're young adults. Okay. It's going to take, another generation before it's finally broke. I'm taking those steps. Unfortunately, my children are not yet healing. So their children are somewhat in the thick of it. Okay. The family curse, but because I'm involved with at least 2 of my 3 grandchildren, I can help them break that curse. And yes, it's going to take a while. I mean, because you still have that, mom and dad are still here with these 2 sets of grandchildren, my grandchildren, their children. And here's grandma helping out. There's a little bit of that clash sometimes between what they parent and what I grandparent. And I grandparent completely different than the way I parented. Okay. Because I didn't know better back then. I had my kids when I was 21, 26, and 27. I didn't know any better. And that was my first marriage. So yes, it does take, but you got to keep at it. You're right. Keep at it. Don't stop. And yes, I love the fact that you just said, cheer on that champion. Because if I'd have had that early on, even from my mom, when I was in my 30s, I went to hypnosis to try and quit smoking. And the therapist put me into, all the way back. That's when I discovered that I was molested by my grandfather. And I sat with this for, it was very traumatic going through that, right? So a few weeks, months or so, whatever it was, went by, and I confronted my mom with it. And I told her the story and what had happened. And she basically said, "You're a liar. There's no way that happened." And I was like, okay, I never spoke about it again to my mom. And it wasn't until I had gone through all my healing that I realized, there's probably a really good possibility that my mom was abused and never wanted to face it. And I had a completely different, she had already passed, but I had a completely different respect and love for my mom to be able to at least not acknowledge it, but let me know in her own way that she understood. And she tried. She tried the best that she could, and I can't blame her for that. I can't blame her for that. And I had a different love for her and a different, like I said, a different respect, that even though she called me a liar and I had to deal with that at the time, that it's okay. I can say that now, that it's okay, that she did the best she could. She did the best she could.
Who else on here has had clinical hypnotherapy?
I've done hypnotherapy.
No, clinical hypnotherapy, because I had the same experience as Christine. I was working through a debilitating fear of driving over bridges. And there's one bridge that goes from British Columbia to Alberta. And you can't avoid this bridge, right? Like, you got to cross this bridge to get there. And I was taking the Bach flower essences, right? And I'm rubbing essential oils on me. I'm praying to Jesus all the way down the hill, right? Make it down the hill, the mountain, across the bridge, the other side. I'm like just sweating. Get to Kelowna, and I called my friend. I'm like, okay, so that clinical hypnotherapist that you had, like, I need her. I can't go home. And I did not want to call Ralph to rescue me, right? Like, that was not the plan. And this clinical session brought me all the way back. It wasn't the fear that I thought. It wasn't any of the fears that I imagined. There were tidbits of that. But to go deep into clinical hypnotherapy to find out what, and then to have to deal with all the things that you didn't know, pretty intense and amazing. I think I've gone under 3 times now. Every time is different. So powerful. Yeah.
I remember if I share something. So I used to work at a homeless charity about 10 years ago, and the charity, obviously part of it, what they did was finding houses or homes for people who are homeless. But they said that was the easiest part of what they did, and they said actually the harder bit was supporting the homeless people with their drug or alcohol problems, but helping them recover and why so coaching and the support for why for those issues, those challenges, because they said the easiest thing for a charity is to find a hostel or get them a home. That's actually that's the physical, or get them on a training course or even get them a job. That's actually but the harder bit is actually the mental health and their ability to cope with challenges and recovery. That's the hardest bit, and I think so many. As using an example, I think so many homeless charities look more at the providing physical thing, not actually the mental side. And I suppose that's the thing with trauma, isn't it? A lot of these things, we might think we've put things in place, our life is better and moved on, but actually, the easiest things to address is changing our physical. Perhaps we're in a better place financially, and we've got a partner, and we've got more. But actually, I think it's that trauma thing, which is a very personal thing that that we very often need to get to address in that sense.
Yeah, I know Christine was mentioning about obviously love towards our parents now. Obviously, with my experience drinking, because obviously it was my own mum who's a drunk herself, and obviously she's on drugs as well. She actually got me onto drink when I was only 11. That's unquestionable. Unquestionable. And do I forgive her for that? No, but I forgive myself because ever since then I've done nothing but show aggression towards her. I've not spoken to her in 6 years, and obviously going through my steps, I obviously I've put her on it. I have actually put her on it, and I'm making that attempt to actually go and reach out to her. I am. When? I don't know. I don't know, but I'm not ready yet. But thinking about what Christine was saying, and my sponsor actually asked me, "Do you believe your mum loved you?" And my answer was, "No, I don't." But now, and then he went, "So, do you know your mum?" And I went, "No, I don't." Which that actually gets you thinking, because if we don't know that person, we don't know what they've been through and why they've chose drink as a coping mechanism, because they may be covering up their trauma. So it's just all these questions, but obviously the only thing I can do is just keep reaching out when I can.
Yeah, and I want to share something on along these lines that we're talking about.
Yeah.
My mother was my abuser, and right now she's in a facility right now in a memory care unit. And I think today was the first time in like 20 years that I reached out and held her hand. And we talked, and I said, Ma, I said, whatever happened, I forgive you. And for me, it was kind of very cathartic to realize, you know, that hurt people like you're talking about. And sometimes we don't look, we just see what we see, but we don't look at the 1,000-mile picture.
Yeah,
And
the root cause, yeah.
and and I have to realize that I have kids, and I've hurt them. Obviously, as a parent, we all hurt our kids.
Yeah.
We're not perfect, but hopefully one day we can, ask for forgiveness and be forgiven, because even in the programs it talks about, if you're going to be sober, if you're going to get sober, you have to do the steps. You have to ask for forgiveness from the people you've hurt and forgive the people that have hurt you, or else you're not going to get sober. So I think it's great that we're actually talking about this, because I think forgiveness is a very something that's not really talked about, but it's a lot of underlying causes of a lot of addictions and a lot of suicides, is because stuff that hasn't been resolved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ashley.
So for me, thinking throughout my childhood, my mom was never a drinker. She still isn't to this day. And my dad's side of the family, on the other hand, is. I can remember my aunts when I was little taking me to parties and all of the things, and pretty much growing up in the bar. But I don't remember there ever necessarily being any physical abuse that came with any of that. But as I got older, I noticed that when I was always around my family, I became just as toxic as they were. Even if I wasn't drinking, it was just their attitude, their perception. And back in, I'd say probably 2007, maybe even before that, I really started to distance myself from my family, where I don't go around unless it's a major holiday, which is typically maybe Thanksgiving or Christmas, and that was about it. I had to put those guards, those walls up just for myself. And then once we started having kids, and up until 2 years ago, my kids would go to Christmas by my grandma's house. But then he was then, I think, 11 at the time. He had said to me, he was like, "Can we go? Like, I don't want to be around these people anymore because of the drinking, the swearing, just the toxicity." So having that realization of confirmation, this is why I stay away. Like, my kids are starting to recognize it. My kids are starting to notice it. And I have to then be the one that continues that protection bubble for them. I'm not going to put that in their hands of, okay, you need to voice this to these people that you don't spend a lot of time with, but you feel safe enough to voice it with me. So now it's up to me to say enough is enough. I'm not going to partake in that for my kids' protection. But even when my husband and I got together, his mom is an alcoholic. And I can remember so many times being at her house, or we're in a store together somewhere, and he gets a phone call from her, and you could tell she had been drinking, and she's slurring her words and repeating herself and stories of the past and just living in that victimhood. And he's trying to talk her out of killing herself because she's like, I'm just going to end it, like just going on and on and on. And I'm like, is she drunk? And he's just like shaking his head. And we're trying to spend time together in a store, and he's trying to talk his mom off of a ledge. And he's done that most of his life, where he was the one, like, he's always seen her intoxicated. He's seen her beaten by a boyfriend and drugs and all of the things, but it was something that made him recognize and has voiced to me, if you're going to go drink, that's fine, but I'm not going to hold your hair if you're vomiting. I'm not going to go pick you up. I'm like, I don't want it around me. And I had to respect that of, okay, so we don't have alcohol in our home, very rarely. And it was just one of those things from the very beginning. Like, I've grown up with this, and I'm not going to tolerate it. So I have did have a very low tolerance for dealing with her, because it was I don't want to hear your excuses. I get now, looking back, like, she did want support. She did want that help, and I gave her as much help as I possibly could. But at the end of the day, I was like, I don't have the patience for you. I don't want to hear your excuses as to why you can't, because you have before. You have to want the change, and I can't make you do it, or I can't want it for you. So again, figure it out. Like, I don't know what more you want from me that I can't supply you. So now we don't talk to her. We haven't had conversations with her in a very long time. She is still very toxic. And it's just, again, that protection for our family.
Yeah.
But it's hard. You feel kind of like you're denying your kids from something, especially when some of my children know of her and some of them have never met her. So it's like you feel like you're denying them the opportunity to have that relationship like I had when I was a kid with, my family and whatever. But again, putting the protection in place is best for everybody sometimes.
Yeah. Welcome back, Christine, by the way. Yeah, that's the situation that me and Kerry are in currently, because obviously my mum, she was forever ever given attention. Even Kerry's parents were forever, before we knew both sides were toxic. We hardly saw our eldest because grandparents were always getting in touch, saying, "Can we have him? Can we take him shopping? Can we have him for tea? Can he stay the night?" All that, and we was forever saying, "Yeah." But we obviously never saw it. That doesn't make us bad parents. We were like letting him have that relationship. But then as soon as we announced to everyone that Kira was pregnant with Tegan, our second born, all that contact stopped. It stopped. And I think that should have been a hit in the nail in the coffin, that was, but it wasn't. Like obviously my mum, she's never met our youngest. Never has. And it has become toxic, really toxic. Obviously, my mum didn't like me and Kerry getting together in the first place. Her parents don't like us being together either. But they think I'm controlling, but they're not. She thinks Kerry's controlling, but it's just tick for tack and all that crap. But we're not. We're just getting by. Just getting by. But it's all about protection. But the situation we're in is we're trying to give that bond, but we're trying to keep the toxic at the same time away. It's just really hard.
Yeah, I think with children, one of our obligations and responsibilities is to keep them safe and protect them. But it's certainly a lot of things you say. Throughout my life and some family members and friends, I have relationships with. But and I, because I know my ability to cope with some of the challenges of people I know, and how much time I spend with them and what I do with them. But, some of them but I won't, or I'll be very, won't let my son, who's 8 years old, spend time with me with some people I know, because I think it's, my primary, obviously obligation is to keep him safe. And it is tricky because I don't want to be, to be overprotective, and I want him to, particularly with family members, to have a relationship. But, it's each, all these people I have to think, what's in his best interest. And actually, they are, I think, obviously children are very vulnerable, and look at our own experiences when we grow up, and how we're affected, even don't realise we're affected by. I think in the 70s, I grew up, I was born in the early 70s. Drinking is more acceptable, and those extremes of drink driving was acceptable in London. Legally you could drink like 5 pints in London. Obviously now you can't drink anything, but it's a different, so the whole drinking culture 70s, and I knew a lot of family members who drank really heavily. It's more acceptable. And all my family as children were exposed to that. But obviously, as we get older, we learn from it and think, do I want my son to experience that? Do I want? So I think it's, it's getting the balance right. We don't be overprotective and want to encourage them to, but at the same time, for me, I know we've got to be so careful with children, haven't we? You're not to be negatively impacted by this traumatic.
Exactly. Oh,
well, I think it's important for us to be able to take the drama out of the situation. And by drama, I mean the connection between our lives. Because if it were someone else's family, we allow that. So it becomes easier when we look at, is this behavior beneficial to my child? Is this person beneficial to our relationship as a family? And if they are not beneficial, then perhaps what they need is a clear direction and a clear understanding as to what is allowed and what is not allowed. On these 3 levels, this is what is allowed for you to interact in our family. Number 1, you must be sober. Number 2, you must have been sober for more than 72 hours. Is that enough? Whatever the number is for you. Everyone's got their own numbers, right? These are the rules. And once you're able to qualify, just like qualifying for an interview for a job, then you have that privilege. It is a privilege to be a part of my family. It is a privilege to interact with us. So this is the requirement.
It softens it a little bit. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to spend time with us. So this is what you must do to do that.
Okay. While we're on that, what's the difference, and this is to all of you, what's the difference, like, if the kid develops that relationship with that grandparent or aunt, uncle, whatever, and that person starts becoming toxic towards us, but not the kids? Obviously, taking into the consideration the relationship, they've got the bond, but also we want to protect them from that harm. So what's the difference between isolation and the protection compared to the grieving process from that child? If for example, we decide you're not seeing that person anymore because of that.
I think I think you need to take into consideration the age of the child.
Yeah.
If it's a young child, up to 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that area, then yes, as a parent, we have to do what is best for that child.
Yeah.
If the child's teenage years, and if they're mature enough, can they make that choice for themselves with maybe visitation with limits, as Nancy pointed out?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In my particular case, my children were young adults. I had no right at that point. I didn't want to have them not have a relationship with my father, even though I knew how extremely narcissistic he is. But I did not want them to have my opinion of what my father is. I wanted them to be able to form their own opinion. I allowed them to have that relationship because maybe, I guess I was hopeful. Maybe he would not be like that with my children, his grandchildren. To answer your question, I think it depends on the age of the child. I mean, if they're young, you have to do whatever you have to do to protect.
We have to do what's right. Yeah.
Now, in my particular case, it kind of backfired because my two of my children have listened to my narcissistic father and believed everything that he has said about their mother. Do I fight it and change it? No, because I know somewhere along the line, as with any narcissist, the truth will come out. And my boys will see that I'm not that mean, crazy, fucked up mom that they've been taught that I am. So I let it go. But yeah, that was a hard one to swallow when I got those conversations, that I realized that because I removed myself from the situation, and I mean completely removed, like moved from Florida to Tennessee. And that's where my two boys are and my father is, and they see each other constantly. They have contact, mostly business type contact, but they have conversation, and I could hear from the things that I've heard and seen that they listen to him. My boys listen to my father. And like I said, I know at some point the truth will come out, and then I'll be okay. I gave them their space. They're adults now. They're in their 30s. They're adults. They can make their own decisions. But with their younger little ones, you got to protect them. You got it's a fine line, Adam.
It is.
You know your children best, and I don't mean you in particular. I mean in general. I mean, your kids. We know our kids. We know what's best for them. To limit that interaction to see how it goes is probably the best thing. If it's a definite no, then use that conversation. Use your communication to have that conversation with the kids and say, I know you don't understand this right now, and as you get older, we can have more discussions on it. But for right now, you can't see, grandma or grandpa.
I think it's also about looking at. They say sometimes it's a no type thing. Especially if a child's younger, it's 8 years old. So sometimes it's no. But if if they go older and want to have a relationship with a family member, then it's how can you facilitate it to happen where I'm going to feel reassured that it's going to take place in an environment that's safe, not just physically, but for my child's sort of mental health and well-being as well. So it's like what and I think putting conditions on is okay to do if it's part of facilitating children to have a relationship with people, but keeping them safe. So I think it's what do we need to do to reassure ourselves that sometimes if they do have a relationship with this person, it's going to be done in there.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I also think 'cause I got 3 children of my own. 2 of them are adults, and one of them's a 13-year-old. But if they ever had that conversation, I would sit them down because they know I'm not I'm a no BS kind of guy. I would say, listen, there's my side, their side, and then there's the truth. So you're going to have to figure it out. You'll figure it out one way or the other because like the young lady up top said, truth always comes out. So as long as they're safe, then and they're an adult, then there's nothing we can really do except show the way that things really are.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is.
I was going to say, Adam, with what Richard said, he brought up a really good point. That we have to take it as a learning experience, because what type of relationship do we want our children to get into when they become of that age? Do we want them, just like Nancy and I were talking about earlier, do we want them repeating the cycle, or do we want them to learn from what we learned to break that cycle? Having that conversation, as Richard said, when they get older and they can understand it, is to give them the tools that they need so that when they get into a relationship, they can say, okay, this is not a healthy relationship. Just like you said in the beginning, Nancy, we can identify then that, okay, this is not, and Ashley, touched on it as well, that this is not a healthy relationship. I recognize these signs from, grandma and grandpa, or, aunt and uncle, and because I had those conversations with Richard, my dad, and mom. We have those conversations to help them become those adults that we want in today's society. So we have to balance where we, and it's tough being a parent, isn't it? Because we have to say, okay, yeah, I know, Ashley, it is. Where's that line, and where do you give and take a little bit? And it's trial and error. We all just admitted that we certainly didn't learn from the best of them, did we?
Life doesn't come with a textbook. Let's just say that.
It does not.
Last time I remember, because I was having this discussion on TikTok yesterday, because social workers, obviously not you, Christine, but most social workers think mums give birth to a textbook, and I think I speak for all mums. I don't remember mums giving birth to a book. No. But anyway, Christine, you've got a question. Nancy's asked you a question about what is sassy. You're muted.
I'm not used to doing that mute and unmute. I'm sorry. And Nancy, I apologize, first of all, for missing your conversation about the clinical hypnotist. I do apologize. Maybe we can get together on that. The grandbabies were crying, so I had to go.
My curiosity is what's SASSI?
Thank you. It's an acronym, and it stands for Women of Abuse. It stands for strong, assertive, smart, sexy, and independent. And it's part of my teaching and my coaching. For the men of abuse, it is sincere, ambitious, supportive, stylish, and inclusive. And that's part of the coaching that I give to men as well.
Stylish? Because I never knew that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So thank you for asking it. Yes, that's what that is.
Going back to that question, Ashley, I have to pick on you now. Don't look worried. Come on, I've drawn for you. But obviously, I know we've had chats about your in-laws of how you don't get on with them. So I think we're in like a bit of a same situation here. So what is the energy, and maybe Nancy can help with this, what is the energy like when you have to basically force yourself to go and communicate with these people? I put her in that situation.
No. Well, my husband's biological mom, like I said, we don't interact with her at all. She doesn't like me. For whatever reason, over the course of all the things I did to help that woman, I have become the evil daughter-in-law who could rot in hell for all she cares. And she really hopes that karma comes back to bite me in the ass and I die. There's that. But as far as my other in-laws, I think like anybody, we have our ups and we have our downs. But I wouldn't say that we necessarily hash everything out on a deeper level when shit hits the fan. I think there's a lot of rug sweeping sometimes, and I feel like there are some moments of pretending, like, oh, we pretend to get along, but in reality, we really don't like each other, I think is sometimes the feel that I get. But then there's moments where we get along just fine. So I think it's a moment by moment sometimes. And maybe even some unknown, like you don't know what version you are going to walk into or dynamic, if you will. So I think I've had to do even my own, I guess, soul searching as to why is it that I get triggered by an email being sent or questioning of my, my actions or something along those lines where I put the defenses up right away because of things that have happened in my past where I am almost arrested in teenage girl development where you're very emotional, your hormones are running high, all of the things where that reaction becomes very emotional versus logical. And I think that's where some of my reactiveness can come from when situations are not stellar, if you will. So I think, it really, again, it ultimately comes down to me and why am I being triggered by that situation and where I have to dig a little more versus loving them where they're at, I guess you could say, which is not always easy, but it's putting myself in more of a matured state than sometimes I want to be because I'd rather just be the reactive psycho daughter-in-law. So that's me.
So basically like Marmite. You either like me or you don't.
That's kind of my attitude sometimes of if you don't like me, that's your problem. That's not my problem. I'm not going to change to be something that you want me to be because that's not who I am. And if you don't like me, don't come over. Or if you're going to come and you're going to be here to judge me and do all the things, well, there's the door. Don't let it hit you on the ass on the way out.
Absolutely. Well, it's all about valuing. That's how I see it. But, right. Where do I go from here? I don't know. What do we think?
What's up for next week?
Nothing. Week off, self-care.
Beautiful.
I'm traveling. I won't even be in town, so that works. And then I'm traveling the following week, so
she's skiving next week, the other week. Yeah.
So wait, let me check my calendar. So you're saying, oh well, this is divine. Okay. So on October 4th, we are not going to be having
weekly
No.
podcast.
No, there's nothing
Well,
there.
on October 4th, I am part of a cooperative launch for a book that I have a chapter in. Not my memoir. You have to wait a little bit longer for that. But it's a cooperative book called I'm So Glad You Left Me.
Wow. Okay.
Can't make that stuff up, right? That it's launching right
know.
before my memoir, right? It's like whoop, whoop. a little teaser for y'all.
Exactly. So yeah, so next week we're having a week off. Good. Bit of self-care. I'm good, thanks. How are you, Kerry? So October the 11th, 2 weeks. Can't believe it's October already, almost.
It's crazy.
Exactly, yeah. October the 11th, we have got some called Lynn Rivers. I know Richard's going to be here. You're going to be back, aren't you, buddy? He ain't got a clue what day it is. I don't know. Come on, Richard! Come on! We got Nick and you, Nancy. So, yeah, and obviously Skyver here next to me. I'm joking. Yeah, October 18th. I don't know the title of that yet. So, yeah. But either way, I think while I've got you, 25th of October, are we all dressing up for Halloween? Ashley says she doesn't like it, but she needs to dress up somehow.
I told you what I was going to do.
All right, okay. Are you, Christine? Are you coming on it?
I will be wherever you want me, Adam.
All right, I haven't even got you on that one. Do you want to come on that one?
I don't even know what it is, and I'm here. I'll be there.
How to reclaim your life is what's on my.
Yeah, that one. That. Oh, you're on that one. And that one is actually at 6 p.m. UK.
Oh wow. Okay.
That one may be a little tricky for me, Adam.
Okay.
Because that'll be noon here.
We'll see how it rocks and rolls, ladies and gentlemen. So on that
Absolutely.
note,
I'm going to.
That sounds a good one. All right.
Yeah.
You're looking really, Nancy, can I say, looking really healthy.
yes, feeling quite
You look really fresh, and you look really healthy. You look nice.
yeah, definitely. I've got a lot off of my chest, so I'm able to feel better on the inside.
Yeah, no, you're looking good.